Hello and welcome to
Ooh,
the Lightline Podcast. We're here with Bonnie.
hello again. So let's see. I believe last time we left off, we were discussing how my life transitioned to a career change upon uh, gaining custody of a toddler and trying to make that single mom money
Mm.
after my police career had kind of, been taken from me. And, um, my niece being removed from the custody of my sister was not my parents' doing. And I didn't feel like it was fair for them to have to financially bear the burden of yet another kid, even though it's their grandchild. And not that they couldn't afford it, I just didn't feel like it was fair for me to put that on them. So I wanted to contribute as much as possible. I had worked for an extensive period of time. Like I said, I obtained my EMT and, started my EMS career with 9/11. So I just kind of continued that career in EMS for the next 15 years. And now is a little bit differently because now we know how to value, for the most part, how we pay our first responders. But when I started in EMS, I made $7 an hour. You heard that correct. $7 an hour. And I'm the person when you call 911 to come save your life.
Yeah,
Whether you're,
that's not
half
okay.
half hanging out a car from a car accident, your leg is ripped off from a motorcycle, grandmom's in cardiac arrest, $7 an hour I'm making to save your life, which by the way doesn't affect how I treat you. I'm obviously going to do everything I can to save your life. But the pay was pretty crappy. So um, I went with some friends one time to one of those pole dance classes. It's like, oh, this looks like fun. And I had maintained a fairly good level of fitness, going to the gym, maintaining strength and stuff like that. They want you to, take care of your body and stuff and all the good stuff, police, DMS, all that stuff. They want you to make sure you take care of your back and,
Mm.
your career will have a little more longevity. So I'd already been in fairly good shape. And when I went with some friends and figured, hey, let me try this class, and it was a lot of fun. And one of the instructors was like, "Hey, you're actually you're pretty good at this." And I laughed and I said, "Oh, it must have been just dance classes when I was like 5." Um, and she's like, "No, you're actually really good at it." She's like, "Did you ever think about like making money doing it?" And I was like, "I mean, I could use some money." I
Mm.
was never one to be a shy person, um, as in like a reserved personality. Obviously, I'm pretty much an extrovert, so I was like, "Well, I can probably do it." And she said, "Why don't you come with me to work? I forget what, next Thursday or something." And I was like, "Okay." And I walked in, and a gentleman walked over me, and she said, "Hey, this is my friend Bonnie." And he looked at me from the top of my head down to the tip of my toes, up to the top of my head, said, "Yeah, she's good." And that was it. Uh,
Damn.
it was weird. The first time that I was on stage, it was very weird. Um, being in, little teeny top and bottoms didn't really phase me. It's when that top had to come off that I was a little weirded out. And honestly, it was weird for about 4 seconds. And I was strangely comfortable on a stage. And I continued to do that, supplementing my, time in the medical field with working in strip clubs. And saw a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Um, any rumors you hear about a strip club, they're all true. They're all true. There's some girls there that are like me who are just trying to make some money. They leave, see you later, don't look back. Play the part, look pretty, smile, shake your butt, and then go home and laugh about, how bad the guy smelled or something.
Mm.
It's just a job at that point. I've seen many women lose their lives. I had a girl that I work with that got murdered by a customer. I had girls that I work with that overdosed. I had girls that I work with that would leave with customers on a regular basis for companionship that would only be legal in Nevada. So I've seen it all. again, at this point in my life, I've had pretty extensive life experience in all different areas. So there's not really a whole lot that shocks me there.
Mm.
And honestly, I enjoyed it. It was one of the few times in my life that I had genuine self-confidence. Growing up, like I had told you before, I was, bullied. I was chubby. I was nerdy, glasses, geek, all that kind of stuff. So I was never one that somebody went after, when I was growing up there. Oh, she's gorgeous. She's this, she's that. So this was the first time in my life that someone validated that I could be viewed attractive. And it fed my self-esteem in actually a rather positive way. However, it affected the way that my relationships would be with men because I didn't trust anybody as far as I could throw them, because the second that they're away from a watchful eye, they'll try and get away with murder. Now, unfortunately, having a police background and having someone attempt to put hands where they don't belong almost got me fired a couple times, because the automatic knee-jerk reaction is to elbow someone directly in the face. So I almost cost myself a job a couple times, but the bouncers and managers took some mercy on me because they knew that I wasn't trying to be violent. It just was an instinct to protect myself. So anyway, like I said, it was a job. You go home, get a shower, forget any of it happened. It allowed me to take my niece on vacations and go to Disney and dance class and good Christmases. And I didn't want her to ever feel like her childhood should be any different, because she wasn't raised with her mother and she lived with her grandparents and her aunt. And it was great. It taught me a lot about parenting. I was not a parent at that point, and it taught me a lot. So I learned a little bit of sacrificing. I didn't go out a whole lot with my friends sometimes because, I was at kid birthday parties, and on the nights I could go out, I stayed out and I worked very late. Sometimes I would go right from either working on the ambulance to the club or right from the hospital to the club to work night shift or something. I was able to put a down payment on my house that I bought. It was fairly lucrative.
Yeah, that's great.
So it paid the bills for sure. However, at the very ripe age of let's just say in my early 40s, quite a few years back, my body started to kind of tell me that it was time to slow down, because when you spend 20 years, 15 in EMS, and you're lifting people that are 250 pounds on a 120-pound stretcher, and it's just two people lifting, and it takes a toll on your body. I am 43 and I need a double hip replacement. That might be from EMS. That might be from the spicy gymnast or midnight ballerina. It also might be from races that I ran. I ran a lot of 5Ks, 10Ks, 10 milers, things of that nature. So pick and choose. But from that point, I had maintained working here and there at the club. I wasn't really too secretive about it. I wasn't very public about it. Now I talk about it. It's not a big deal, but I didn't want people to know at the time because I didn't want people popping up that didn't need to pop up at the club at the wrong time. However, at the time I did work as a sort of a medic on a construction site where basically if the construction workers got some kind of injury, small, medium, large, they would come in to see me, and I would either treat it there or send them to a workers' comp doctor or send them to the ER. Or if they were really severely injured, I'd have to go out to them on the construction site and, wait for the ambulance to come get them and take them to the emergency room, depending on how severe. But so I met a lot of people. I really had to kind of keep it quiet because I worked on a construction site. I am a female on a construction site who also does some stripping at night. So I have to really watch who I'm around, who I tell, things of that nature.
Yeah.
My close little network, they knew, and that was fine. I'm trying to think of what an appropriate nickname would be to give this gentleman. We'll just call him David. Dave, one or the other. Uh, insert Dave into the picture. Dave worked on the construction site with me and knew a whole group of people. And we had some mutual friends. And, sometimes would occasionally, it was like acquaintances would hang out and things of that nature. I had known Dave for probably about 7 or 8 years at this point, from different construction sites that I had worked in. And rolls around very rapidly my 30th birthday. And my 30th birthday happened to be on like a Tuesday or some crappy night of the week where nobody celebrates.
Mm.
And Dave and some other friends invited me, hey, come out, let's just grab some drinks and stuff. A couple of, little clique of some, I wouldn't quite call them friends, but, people that I was familiar with and felt comfortable with. So they said, you can't stay home, on your 30th birthday, you got to come out. So I went to their neighborhood, which was a neighborhood that I was not very familiar with. Wasn't the safest of neighborhoods, but I was with people that I trusted, so I wasn't concerned.
Mm.
And at this point, I wasn't really looking to go balls to the wall. I just kind of wanted to have, 2 or 3 drinks and roll out and head home. I had a Miller Lite bottle, took a couple sips of that. It was a small corner bar that we were at. And the bartender says, here, you can finish up this bottle. I think it was a bottle of Ciroc. I think it was Ciroc. And there was enough in there for maybe like 1 or 2 shots, I think, left in the bottle. So there's a picture of me just tipping the bottle back, and I look like I just chugged the whole bottle. In reality, I literally just had one big shot. A couple minutes later, I'm still finishing milking my first beer. And that's all I remember. And I don't tell this story often, but the only way that I could describe it to people where they can understand how my brain sees it is lights on, lights off.
Wow.
Lights on, X, Y, and Z happens, and then lights out, I don't remember anything. So as I tell you kind of what happened, you're going to hear me refer to this. For example, so, I'm sipping on my beer and lights out. A little bit time later, lights on, I am falling out of the bar, falling. There's 1 or 2 steps to get, out onto the sidewalk. And I don't know what is wrong with me, but I am apparently very hammered. And I remember thinking to myself, like, wow, how did I get this sloshed? I must have had a lot of shots. And I was nervous because, again, I'm in a neighborhood I don't know, and I'm with some people that I am not super close with. But I do know Dave, and Dave's with me. So I remember having my arm around, and I look over, and I'm like, thank God it's Dave, because I don't know these people, and I'm nervous. And, like, I'm just glad that he's with me, because I wouldn't normally put myself in that kind of a situation. You have to understand, I'm a former police officer. I'm a midnight ballerina. Like, I have a little bit of street smarts about me. So I remember, I don't know exactly what I said, but telling my mother that, I was highly intoxicated and I was staying at a friend's and I would not be home because I didn't want her to worry about me. I don't remember how that phone call went. So then lights out. And lights on. I have to go to the bathroom really, really badly. My stomach is extremely upset. There are some rumblies in my tumbly. And I remember it was very dark out, and my friend Dave helped me into a house to use the restroom. And I remember stepping over kids in sleeping bags that were, laying on the living room floor and being helped upstairs. Went into the bathroom and was violently ill from the waist down. And then lights out again. Lights on. I am back outside and I am falling into the back seat of this white vehicle. Lights out again. Lights on. I am walking in a dark hallway upstairs in a house to a bedroom. And I don't know where I am, whose house, but Dave is with me and he's like, it's okay. You're with me. At this point, I am not feeling well at all. And I'm in a bedroom and it's very dark and I lay down. And as soon as I lay down, I am vomiting profusely, which lucky for me, Dave was actually prepared for it because there was a trash can very close to the bed. So I wasn't sick everywhere. I just remember being violently ill and just vomiting, retching very hard, and then lights out. And lights on, I don't have any clothes on. I don't remember taking anything off. And I was extremely tired and I felt like my limbs weighed 1,000 pounds. It was very hard to pick my arms up. I couldn't move my legs very well. So I noticed that I don't have clothes on and it's very hard to open my eyes, but I feel a sensation between my legs of Dave's head. And I don't know why it's there. And I know that I don't want it there. And I am trying to pick up my hands to pull his head away from there. And I can't move my hands. I just had no control over them. And very, very tired, can barely stay awake. And lights out for a little while. And then lights on. And I feel movement of the bed in a rhythmic fashion. I'm sure you can use your imagination.
Yeah.
And I'm too tired. I don't have any movement. I don't want to say paralyzed, but I mean, in a sense, I can't, there's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
And then lights out and lights on, and it's very bright in the room. It's daylight out and I have no clothes on. I feel horrible. My stomach feels like there is rocks and acid having a party inside of it. I'm very, very sick. I've never had stomach pain like this. And I'm looking around and I know that at some point I was with Dave and I look over and I don't see him. I'm in this room by myself and I reach over to try and see if I can pull myself up by the doorknob handle to kind of help sit myself up. And the door is locked. And I don't know why. And I'm confused, but I don't know where Dave is. So I pick up my phone and I call Dave and I say, hey, where are you? And he says, hey, sleepyhead. And I said, what time is it? And he says, oh, you've been sleeping all morning. And then lights out and lights on. I'm in the same room, but it's dark again. I'm still by myself. I think that I called Dave again. And I remember him saying, I'll be home and I'll take you to your car soon. And lights out. Lights on. I'm in the passenger seat of his car and we're driving. It's probably the middle of the night. I can't really, it's very late. There's no cars on the road. Um, but I know it's definitely late.
Mm.
And I said to Dave, um, did we have sex last night? And he turned and looked at me and said, you don't remember last night? And I said, no. And he said, well, Bonnie, you drank a lot and I didn't know what to do. So I didn't want you driving. So I just brought you back to my house so you could sleep it off. And I said, okay. And lights out, uh, lights on. I'm driving. And I'm crossing the bridge into the state where my mom lives because I had gone across the bridge to go hang out with my friends. And I remember being petrified because I was watching my car just go across 3 and 4 lanes of the highway to the left or to the right. I cannot focus and I'm don't know why. And I'm praying to God, please, I need to get pulled over because I'm scared. I'm scared to drive, but I need to get home. And lights out, and then lights on. I walk into my parents' house. Don't judge me. I'm 30 and I lived at home only because I had a really good relationship with my parents.
Yeah, that's a lucky thing.
But
Judgment.
I went into the house and I remember saying something to my mother of, I'm home and I'm okay. And she said, wow, are you still hammered? Why would you drive like that? And lights off again. And I don't remember anything for like 2 days after that, except feeling horrible. I can't even describe it to you as the worst hangover ever
Yeah,
known to me.
sounds like you were
So,
drugged.
very much so. Definitely gamma hydroxybutyrate, so GHB, date rape drug. The I currently, at least for the past couple of years, have worked as a tech in the operating room, working for anesthesia. So I help the doctors and the nurse anesthetists put people to sleep for surgery. And there are certain drugs that you can use in surgery that would give similar effects.
Mhm.
They also use these kinds of medications for things like narcolepsy. Um, so we know what kind of dosages and things of that nature and what kind of side effects a normal dose would give someone. And from what we can calculate, I was definitely overdosed. To lose a point, I lost about 4 days worth of memory on and off. But at the time, I was like, wow, I was a hot mess on my 30th birthday. And my brain just buried it. And it wasn't on purpose. I think my brain was just kind of protecting itself because I really didn't think about it for the next couple of years. And unfortunately, what brought it out was, believe it or not, Surviving R. Kelly. I'm sure everybody's familiar. I think it was on Netflix, right? It might have been on. Where it was there was 2 seasons of it, and it was Surviving R. Kelly. It was about all the sex trafficked and drugged and raped and molested and abused women that R. Kelly has his stellar reputation from. And side note, really wish horrible things on that man. I wouldn't piss on that man if he were on fire, but that's neither here nor there. I made through the whole first season, and this was after the rape, and it took me a long time to be able to say the dreaded R word. I went through the whole first season. It was like, man, this guy's a scumbag. Oh my God, I got right on the hype and jumped on the bandwagon when everybody was binge watching it. And then season 2 came out. And I haven't finished season 2 because I can't get through it. I got to, I want to say it was the second or third episode. And I remember something that one of his victims said. And she said she couldn't understand why she would call R. Kelly back like a day later or later the evening or whatever her assault had taken place. And she would kind of say things to him like, hey, like, you want to come over and mess around? And I remember the person interviewing was like, well, why would you ask someone that just brutally raped you? Why would you ask them to then participate in a sexual act? And I remember the girl saying, well, at least this time I get to make the choice to say yes. Instead of being told, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, that sounds like a trauma bond.
It completely turned my world upside down. This was 8 years after I had been overdosed and brutally raped, locked in a room for 2 days by my friend that I trusted. And it was like it had just happened. Obviously, I have some pretty clear experience with PTSD between 9/11, between watching my father pass away. But it had never done the effects like it did this time. I didn't realize that it was PTSD because I went to a neurologist. I thought something was wrong with my brain. I couldn't focus to read. My memory was shot. I was extremely restless. I thought that maybe I had MS or something neurological because all of a sudden I wasn't able to think clearly. I was having panic attacks, and being in the medical field, we overthink everything and we think of a million different solutions before we'll actually go see a doctor and be diagnosed with anything. Mm-hmm. And I had gone to this neurologist and I just could not figure out what was wrong with me. And at the time, I had started dating my now husband. And it was horrible timing as it's a new dating relationship. And I have severe sexual trauma and I can't relax around my at the time boyfriend. If we're laying in bed together and he puts his hand on my hip, I am jumping out of my skin, out of a sound sleep. Mm-hmm. The second that there's a hand on me and I'm asleep, I'm wide awake because I'm afraid someone's hurting me. And I was having panic attacks like it just happened. And that was how I knew. And I started to put the pieces together because I was not a panic attack kind of girly. The only time in my life I'd ever had panic attacks, we talked about it, airplanes. I don't do well flying. Much better now, but those were the only true panic attacks I had ever had, sobbing uncontrollably, hyperventilating. I'm a tough cookie. That doesn't happen to me. I don't have panic attacks. I was a police officer. I'm a tough cookie. I grew up fighting and scrapping and, I was a city kid. That stuff doesn't happen to me. So the more I started to process the actual effect of the severe PTSD I had from it, it became apparent that this is something that really needs to be dug into. And this is where I try to approach my mental health a bit different than I had in the past. Obviously, in the things that we'd spoken about, I really could write a book with the things that I'm not telling you. These are just the cliff notes. These are the highlights, if you will. But these are, the significant events in my life that are just trauma after trauma after trauma. And I'm not going to belittle anyone's trauma. Whatever you perceive to be trauma is your trauma. But I remember at the time, the therapist that I saw, not that there's anything wrong with just a licensed clinical social worker who's, certified, to be a therapist. They work for many people for many different reasons. And I love therapy. I think it's fantastic. It worked for me in a lot of areas of my life and had gotten me through the first 38 years of my life to that point. Obviously, being in intensive therapy as a child, after my dad passing away, my mom was a part of a group called, I don't even think they have it anymore. It's called Parents Without Partners. The adults would go into a group therapy session and the kids who had lost a parent would go into, and we would make pottery and shit and paint pretty pictures and, all that kind of stuff. And at the time, I think I was still kind of avoidant because I just remember, they would ask me about my dad and good memories. And I just couldn't stop feeling bad for the little boy next to me who lost his mommy to cancer. So I wasn't even then addressing my own issues. But throughout the other things that I had been through in my life, not only with just talk therapy, I did many different kinds of anti-anxiety medications and antidepressants, run the whole gamut. And I'll tell you what I've learned is they have testing available now. And I know that a lot of insurances do not cover it, but it's only a couple $100 for I don't know if you're familiar with the genetic testing that they can do to, to see how you metabolize certain types of medications. That was an absolute game changer for me when it came to mental health medications. I highly recommend it because it'll tell you if you're on this type of medication. Are you an ultra metabolizer? Are you a slow metabolizer? So your prescribing doctor or practitioner knows if you can start out at a bit of a higher dose because you're an ultra metabolizer. You process the medicine a little faster than the average medication that you might take. I couldn't recommend that enough to anyone who is not sure where they would want to start with the mental health medication when they, talk to their doctor about it. It saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of guesswork.
Did you do GeneSight?
I did. I want to say it was called Color, but they're all kind of the same equivalent. I know that GeneSight is one. There's a bunch of different ones. If you just were able to Google, genetic testing for, medication metabolization, it saved a lot of guesswork, cut a lot of time. I wish I had done it 20 years ago instead of trying this med and then this med for a couple months and then this one for a year and a half. And then this one's not working. It's just that flip flop was eliminated for me once I did this test. And that was a game changer in that aspect as to how to treat it. So I had been continuously on, this specific medication now for a couple of years and it had been working. However, like I said, when I wasn't sure where my trauma fit on the scale of things, no one can compare trauma. My trauma is going to be different than your trauma. What I view as trauma may not be the same as yours, but it doesn't make yours any less valid. It's how it makes you feel. Some have a higher tolerance, some do not, and that's okay. That doesn't have anything to do with, how important it is for you. Yeah. And for you to seek the treatment that you need. And I just would highly recommend if people are just feel like they're bouncing back and forth with medications and this and that, there are so many different combinations and, there's other medications you could take to kind of supplement for any side effects other ones might cause. I highly, highly recommend it. I will get off my soapbox, I promise. But I feel like it would really eliminate a lot of guesswork for a lot of people. And I recall, asking the therapist, the licensed therapist that I had at the time, and I had said to her, can I ask you a question? Can you tell me where I fit in your scope? And she said, well, Bonnie, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, I'm sure you see a lot of varieties of patients, with like, you know, this side being 100% and this side being 5%. Where do I fit on that scale for you for like the intensity and the amount of trauma that I have? And I really just wanted validation to feel like I've been through a bit.
Yeah.
And he said, well, Bonnie, what I think isn't relevant. Where do you think you fit? And at that point, I kind of took a step back and realized I think my therapist is in a little over her head at this point, because she was just a therapist in the office where I saw the psychiatrist to get the mental health medications. And at that point, I realized I needed way more intensive help. And first of all, in the process of all this madness of trying to learn who I am and really get to the core and scoop out all the yucky of who I really am, I married the love of my life. And it was amazing. And he's everything I never knew I needed. And he also is in the United States military. So fortunately for me, I have good health insurance. And there's also a program that the military has, and it's a specific type of program that deals with military families. It can be spouses, children, things of that nature, with specific mental health needs. And at the time, I am fairly new to discovering that I'm a rape victim. And I hate the word victim. I'm sure any victim of sexual assault will tell you they hate being a victim. I don't like being a victim. And it was really, really hard for me to swallow because I was embarrassed and I was ashamed of myself and I blamed myself because, I'm a former police officer. How could I be so stupid to let that happen to me? How could I be so gullible to trust somebody like that? How could I be so absent-minded to not watch my drink? But I'm around friends. I don't think I need to watch my drink. You know? It was really, it was eye-opening for me and it was humbling for me. And with the military having a specific program called the Cohen Clinic, I was able to get treatment with a psychologist. The one that I saw in Philly where I was living, her name is Leah, and Leah saved my sanity, and she validated me, and she made me dig, and she made me dig deep. And I am so incredibly grateful for Leah and the love and the support, the validation that she gave me. It's unmatched. I don't think I would have ever found it anywhere else. She was a godsend. And she walked side by side with me and allowed me to express myself fully and all the insecurities that I felt and, blaming myself. I don't know why. I couldn't understand why there's such a stigma with, victim blaming. Because to me, it didn't make sense why anybody would blame the victim. I was too busy blaming myself. I didn't need other people to blame me. I didn't need anybody to say, Bonnie, that was really stupid. Why would you not watch your drink? Bonnie, that was really stupid. Why wouldn't you see somebody like that? What were you wearing? Were you acting flirty? Were you hanging all over somebody? You can't expect that to not happen if you're doing all those things. It is. It's really gross. And so Leah, who really should be nominated for sainthood, I can't sing her praises enough. She's an incredible human being. She allowed me to realize on my own that I was overdosed extremely, and I legit could have died easily. I could have aspirated on my own vomit the many, many times that I likely vomited, not just the ones that I barely remember. I'm sure there were others. She allowed me to reflect back and realize that this man was a predator. Everything was conveniently where it needed to be. We were conveniently near his house. We were conveniently in a room that locked from the outside. We were conveniently laying in a bed that had a trash can that was large enough to accommodate copious amounts of vomit, positioned right next to the head of my side of the bed. It also allowed me to think all the times he used to call me B. He'd say, B, you're a tough bitch, B. Nobody's going to fuck with you, B. You're a badass bitch, B. He said this to me for years. He set me up. He knew. He knew that I would never go down without a fight. I mean, I can remember learning, growing up, police academy stuff, street survival. I would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. I will take your life to defend my own. And Dave knew that. So, in order to get what he wanted, he had to render me paralyzed and unable to physically defend myself, or even allow me to be conscious, to even think about defending myself. That man could have killed me. Yeah. And it took me a while to really stop blaming myself. And man, how stupid could you be? Now I look back and that had nothing to do with me. He was a sick son of a bitch. Magically, that whole group of friends kind of fell to the wayside. I didn't really feel the need to reach out, and they certainly didn't feel the need to reach out to me. So that kind of told me somebody else might have known about that too, and maybe talked me into coming out that night. I don't know. Huge conspiracy theory there, but either way, sorry, my ADHD and my emotions are kind of messing with my brain right now.
It's okay.
So I apologize if I'm jumping all over the place. It's still a lot to process, but
yeah.
Leah helped me be able to maintain somewhat of a healthy sex life with my husband. This is a man who loves me and would do anything for me, and he touches my hip in the middle of the night, and he's got to pull me off the ceiling. It was a lot. It was hard to, just get used to, hold it. He was very patient. He would hold my hand to fall asleep so that I could be used to that physical touch. I was single for a long time before I met my husband, just because I had a string of crappy relationships and I didn't really trust men in that aspect anyway. So I can guarantee you that this didn't really solidify that trust anymore. But he was very patient with me and took things very slow with me and listened to me. And the poor man would have to stop in the middle of, having some fun with, his fiance, wife, whatever it was at the time, because I was hysterical and having a panic attack. It was a lot to process, and he walked through every bit of it with me, and he was wonderful. And I'm very grateful that I had him at the time. And so fast forward a little bit, I'm, doing therapy and medication, and my husband is in the military, so we up and move across the country. The only reason I went into law enforcement instead of the military is because I didn't want to move all over the damn country. And here I am marrying a sailor and have to move across the country. So, I have obviously some attachment issues after losing a parent and things of that nature. So let's pile all that on top of anxiety and depression and PTSD and surviving sexual assault, all that good stuff. And now I'm living 1,500 miles from anyone else that I know and love and are in my support bubble. Obviously, anyone is just a phone call away. But I have my husband and our little family, and that's it. And I reached back out to the Cohen Clinic, said I need some help still. I'm not coping okay. Insert Chelsea, the next best thing. Leah, number 2. Again, another psychologist. They basically, because it's the same network, they kind of transferred care one to the other. Leah handpicked Chelsea for me because they are a nationwide network of providers. She knew what I needed, the kind of person I was, the kind of trauma I'd been through. And she set me up for success. So now I have Chelsea to guide me through really trying to recover from a sexual assault and trying to build a stable foundation 1,500 miles away from everyone that I love and know for love. So it's been a lot, I like to think that this is the I guess the return of the Jedi of my life. My brother's a big Star Wars nut. Shout out to Ken. So this is like the second part of my life. This is my rebirth. This is the new me. Bonnie, who is the wife and the mom to an amazing stepkid. And, I get to be a daughter-in-law and I have a brother and sister-in-law now. And it's a whole new part of my life that I've never had before. And for whatever reason, even though all these positive things were happening, that pit is still in my stomach. No matter how much medicine I try, or therapy I do, or journals I write in, or group therapies, or coloring to keep my mind busy, this is where the idea of IV ketamine infusion is introduced to me.